Okay, so we're back for another day of reading from our chapter book, which of course is Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger. I cannot believe that we're already on the 13th chapter of this book. I can't believe it. In just, 17 chapters, we're going to have to move on to a new book. So we'll have to find a new chapter book to read before we leave for the year. But until then, we're going to enjoy reading our Wayside School book, of course written by Louis Sachar. Remember, yesterday Miss Mush saved the class by making sure that Mr. Gorf was put into, I don't even know where he actually went, but remember his nose flew off and all the kids got their voices back and it was a great day. Now, they're getting a new teacher. This is her picture, remember, and we have to see what happens. All right, chapter 13, the new teacher. The new teacher entered the classroom carrying a big blue notebook stuffed with papers. She had white hair and wore glasses. She was a lot older than anyone else in the class. She took a big breath. My, it's tiring walking up all those stairs, isn't it? She said. Nobody said anything. They just stared at her. She set her notebook on the teacher's desk. My name is Mrs. Drazil, she said, and I'm not from Brazil. And she smiled at her little joke. Nobody else smiled. After Mrs. and Mr. Gorf, they didn't trust teachers at all. Drazil, thought Dee Dee. Where have I heard that name before? Where are you from? Asked Leslie. Actually, I was born not too far from here, said Mrs. Drazil. Then why do you say you came from Brazil? Said Benjamin. No, I said I wasn't from Brazil, said Mrs. Drazil. Well, have you ever been to Brazil? Asked Eric Fry. No, explained Mrs. Drazil. It was just a little joke. Brazil rhymes with Drazil, and I thought it might help you remember my name. Terrence laughed. Drazil, Brazil, he shouted. That's funny. Several other kids began laughing too, but not Dee Dee. She had heard of Mrs. Drazil somewhere. She was sure of it. And whatever she had heard, she was sure it was not good. What's a Brazil? Asked Eric Ovens. Brazil is the largest country in South America, said Mrs. Drazil. Oh, said Eric Ovens. I thought it was one of those things that, women wear on their chest. Several other kids laughed. No, that's a brassiere, said Mrs. Drazil. There was even more laughter now. The kids are being so silly. Stephen was shocked. She said brassiere, he whispered, right in our class. I know, I heard her, said Jason. But Dee Dee still didn't trust her, even if she did say brassiere right out loud. There was a television show that Dee Dee liked to watch. It was about real criminals. At the end of the show, they always asked the viewers to call the police if they knew where any of the criminals were. Dee Dee wondered if she had seen Mrs. Drazil on that show. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask me? Asked Mrs. Drazil. Ron raised his hand. Mrs. Drazil pointed to him. How old are you? Asked Ron. Dana gasped. You're not supposed to ask someone that, she said. Especially someone old as Mrs. Drazil, said Mac. Mrs. Drazil smiled. Oh, I don't mind, she said. I'm 66 years old. You can ask me anything you want. Anything? Asked Joy. I'm a teacher, said Mrs. Drazil. That's what I'm here for. Paul raised his hand. How much do you weigh? He asked. 124 pounds, said Mrs. Drazil. How much money do you make? Asked Eric Bacon. I'm a substitute teacher, explained Mrs. Drizzle, so I only make money on days that I teach. Then I make $51.18 a day. What a rip-off, said Jenny. You should make at least $200 a day. That would be nice, said Mrs. Drizzle, but I'm a teacher because I love to teach. I love to see young children learn. Joy raised her hand now. How many men have you kissed in your whole life? Mrs. Drizzle thought a moment as she appeared to be counting on her fingers. 31, she said. Everyone gasped now. Dee Dee raised her hand. Mrs. Drizzle smiled at her. Yes, the girl in the pretty flower t-shirt. Have you ever been in jail? Asked Dee Dee. No, said Mrs. Drizzle. Are the police after you? No, said Mrs. Drizzle. Dee Dee still didn't trust her. Okay, said Mrs. Drizzle. Before we get started, I want to say one more thing. I enjoy teaching so much that sometimes I get a little carried away. I talk too much. So if I start to get boring, will somebody please raise their hand and tell me? For real? Asked Todd. You want us to tell you to stop talking? And we won't even get in trouble? Asked Bibi. No, of course not, said Mrs. Drizzle. You'll be helping me and the rest of your class. You're not going to learn anything if you're bored. Cool, said Terrence. Oh, I suppose when I first started teaching, I used to be a little more strict, said Mrs. Drizzle. I even worried about things like whether my students had clean fingernails or if their shirts were tucked in. She laughed. But times have changed. I've changed. Besides, the kids were a lot worse back then. At least, some of them were. For just a second, her sweet face turned sour, and she looked at the notebook on her desk. Then she smiled again. I believe teaching requires mutual cooperation. I will cooperate with you, and you will need to cooperate with me. If we work together, we will have a very enjoyable learning experience. Her face turned sour again. But if you cross me, you will be very, very sorry. She ran her fingers over her blue notebook. Oh, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday I will get you. You can run, but you can't hide. She smiled. Okay, let's get started. The end. All right, well, that was very interesting. So it seems like Mrs. Drizzle is very kind and sweet, but she might have a mean side that we don't know about. So Dee Dee is suspicious, and so am I. So maybe in the next couple chapters, we'll find out what's going to happen with Mrs. Drizzle. Tomorrow, we will read chapter 14. Go ahead and make your predictions. See you soon.